It is the start of a fratricidal war. Two factions of the same royal family stand facing each other across the dusty plains of Kurukshetra, waiting for the signal to begin a slaughter that will destroy their entire lineage. This moment is the setting for the Bhagavad Gita. It is a 700-verse philosophical discourse embedded at the exact center of the Mahabharata, a massive epic that tracks a bitter dynastic struggle for the throne. As the conscious blow to signal the start of hostilities, Arjuna, the most skilled warrior of his age, experiences a total physical and emotional collapse. He drops his legendary bow, his mouth goes dry, and he tells his charioteer he cannot fight. The text maps the anatomy of this breakdown across 3 layers. First is a paralysis of will. Arjuna is torn between his martial duty to fight for justice and his familial duty to protect his kin, leaving him unable to move in either direction. This conflict triggers the second layer, emotional overwhelm. Seeing his grandfather and his teachers in the opposing army, he is consumed by a grief born from his attachment to their physical forms. Finally, this results in intellectual confusion. He begins to doubt the logic of victory itself, arguing that a blood-soaked throne would lead only to social decay and a life of sin. Arjuna attempts to resolve the crisis by retreating into inaction, suggesting he would rather live on alms than kill his relatives. It is a reaction many of us recognize, the urge to walk away when the ethical or psychological pressure of a situation becomes too heavy. But the Gita argues that running away from systemic dilemmas doesn't actually solve them. Instead, it suggests that the battlefield is where the solution must be found. At this point, Krishna, the divine being serving as Arjuna's charioteer, begins to teach. He explains that spiritual realization doesn't require a quiet monastery. It is achieved precisely within the friction of worldly life. Krishna introduces the Trimarga, or the threefold path. These are 3 distinct methods of practice designed to dismantle the specific psychological barriers Arjuna is facing. The first is Karma Yoga, or the path of selfless action. This is the specific remedy for a paralyzed will, moving an individual from stagnation back into their necessary social duties. The mechanic of Karma Yoga is to perform your work with maximum effort while remaining indifferent to the outcome. By doing the work because it is your duty, without craving the result or fearing failure, the action no longer carries the weight of stress or ego. To counter emotional overwhelm and grief, the Gita offers Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion. Bhakti shifts the heart's focus. Instead of being anchored to the transient and changing bodies of relatives, the practitioner anchors their love to the unchanging divine. This turns every emotion into a form of connection to something larger than the self. By redirecting external effort and internal attachment, karma and bhakti allow an individual to engage with the world without being crushed by the high stakes of their own personal desires. Finally, the text introduces Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge, to address Arjuna's intellectual confusion. Jnana Yoga uses sharp intellectual discrimination to separate the observer from the observed. It teaches that while the physical body and the material world are in constant flux, the Atman, the inner soul, remains unborn, unchanging, and immortal. The Gita explains that this realization acts like a fire that burns away the confusion of the mind. Once you see that the soul cannot be cut by weapons or burned by fire, the existential fear of death is replaced by the understanding that life is merely a transition. This knowledge resolves Arjuna's doubt. He can fight not because he has become indifferent to life, but because his intellect now distinguishes between the transient physical shell and the eternal spirit within. By the conclusion of the text, these 3 paths, action, devotion, and knowledge, are no longer treated as separate choices. They function together. The practitioner acts selflessly while feeling divine love and maintaining a constant awareness of the absolute truth. This integration creates the Sthita Prajna, a person of steady wisdom. This is the Gita's model for the perfected human mind. In this state, an individual is neither elated by success nor distressed by failure. They perform their worldly duties flawlessly without attachment, maintain humility through devotion, and hold an unbroken awareness of reality, all at once. The Gita teaches that enlightenment is not a retreat from the world, but the achievement of internal equilibrium while standing in the middle of it. The text uses the ocean metaphor to describe this mind. Just as rushing rivers cannot change the overall level of the sea, the constant flow of life's crises and desires enters the mind of the sage, yet the ocean remains deep and still at its center.